Celtics 130, Nets 126, double OT. Peyton Pritchard leading the way for the C's, 32 points. Jaylen Brown with 27. Hugo Gonzalez hitting a three-pointer with 0.4 seconds left to send it into double overtime, where Pritchard helped seal it again, 130-126. So from an entertainment standpoint, that's fun. And the Gonzalez shot was great, paid off for Joe Mazzulla. But let's be honest, and welcome into the Sports Hub Celtics show. Jim Murray, Chris Gasper, Brian Robb covering the Celtics for MassLive. If you want to talk C's, now's the time to do it. Obviously, it's been Patriots heavy here on these airwaves, rightfully so, as they're going to the AFC Championship game tomorrow. Call us at 617-779-0985. If we're being honest, the game should have never went to overtime in the first place. Am I wrong by saying that?
No, I don't think so. So as great as Joe was in the first overtime and the second overtime, and we'll get into that in terms of the substitutions. Amari Williams, I thought, was huge for them. The substitution he made to put Ugo in right before the play started, hit the three. I don't think that game goes to overtime if he doesn't substitute at the end, Ugo into the game, and go with no bigs. No Garza. Keita had fouled out. He makes the decision that they're going to go with no bigs there at the end, and part of that was you didn't want to give up a good three-point look to Michael Porter Jr. Well, you gave that up, and then you gave up the game-time follow to Nick Claxton because you had no bigs in there. At least that was part of it. So great job overall by Joe in this game, but the reality is none of the great strategy you saw from him in overtime and double overtime is necessary if he has a more conventional defensive lineup out there at the end, in my opinion.
Does it also maybe speak to the fact that, look, this team they've exceeded expectations. They're going to get Tatum back. They feel like maybe once that happens, they could certainly win the title. Like, you've got to be a little bit more aggressive here when you go into the NBA trade deadline coming up, that you've got to add a big.
Yeah, it's
not just
point.
A strategy thing, but you look at this and say, we need to add a big body.
Yeah, because Keita is amongst the league leaders in fouls per 48 minutes, and that was I thought he committed some silly fouls in the fourth quarter and put them in a bad spot. And he does that from time to time. He's had an excellent season, and he has, like the team, exceeded expectations. But I do think when you start to talk about all these amazing plus-minus numbers and the other stuff he does, you have to have some context to it, which is that he's a foul machine. And it's a little dangerous to rely on him because he can't stay in games on a consistent basis. He just commits too many fouls. If you're Brad Stevens and you look at it, that clearly, in looking at this game against a bad Brooklyn team and what ended up happening, and there were some things that worked against them, right? I think and I know he's been out of the rotation, but if maybe they had Josh Minot, he maybe would have been an option there. He's played a little small ball center. He was out. Obviously, Derek White didn't play in the game, so Ugo's probably not in there at the end. Derek White's probably in there, obviously, instead for the putback that Claxton had. So there are some things that were unique about last night, but if you're Brad Stevens in the front office, you have to watch that game and say, we have to find a way to get another big in here.
All right, B-Rob, covering the Celtics from MassLive. Your takeaways on this? Is there a name that maybe pops into mind that they should definitely try to make a trade for ahead of the deadline for a big man?
I mean, there's a number of them. Ones we've talked about plenty is Zubac shot, with the Clippers. I don't know if he's going to be available. I do think a couple guys we saw in this game last night, like Sharp and Claxton for the Nets, the guys that were hitting those guys are certainly going to be available. Can you do better than those guys? Potentially, but those are names to look at to just give you that depth at the position. This, to Chris's point, this team has played well enough now where this team deserves another big. Like, if you want to take a legitimate crack at this in the Eastern Conference, you can't have a game like that where your two centers foul out and you're too afraid to go to Xavier Tillman or Chris Boucher. So this is an example here of you need to go after someone. You deserve to go after someone for this team, and there should be enough sellers on the market right now. You'll get like a semi-decent name for big.
Yeah, that last night wasn't just about Keita fouling out. It felt glaring. Like, you've got to add something to this team. And you're right, they do deserve it. I'm going to go to some of the calls early because we're going to be talking to Bobby Manning, who covers the Celtics for CLNS Media. He will be joining us shortly. Let's go to Dave. Is this Dave in Shrewsbury or Dean in Shrewsbury?
It's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Dave.
Yeah, hey, I have a question. Why isn't Jordan Walsh getting more time? I thought he did a really nice job on Porter last night, and I would have liked to have seen him in there at the end of the game. Just wondering what your thoughts are. And my other question is, do you think Keita has hit his ceiling, or does he have a lot more room to grow?
Yeah, I'll start with the last question first. I think he still has room to grow, but I wouldn't say a lot more room to grow. I think
He kind of is what he is at this point.
Well, I mean, I think he can be better in terms of not fouling as much, and there's still his passing can get better. But overall, with his game, I don't expect him to be a guy that's going to add a ton of three-point shooting. I know he was able to do some of that in Eurobasket for Portugal, and I don't think he's ever going to be a guy at the NBA level that has a great post game. I mean, he's a pick and roll guy, rim runner, cleanup guy, athlete. So that's good. I think that's good overall. I completely agree about the Jordan Walsh situation. I thought there was too much Baylor Shireman in that game last night. I thought he didn't really have it offensively or defensively. There were a couple times it looked to me like he blew rotations or went under the screen against Michael Porter Jr. I would have gone with Jordan Walsh more in this game than Joe Mazzulla did.
I agree with that. He's also one of your best forward rebounders, period, in that game. So you guys, they were getting crushed on the offensive glass by the Nets bigs, and Walsh is someone who can help you plug that hole. So it is. Only 15 minutes in a double overtime game. That was a little bit surprising.
Is this a case of a guy that might be on Joe's S list or something, or he hasn't proved enough? I mean, we've seen this type of thing before.
I don't think it's that bad. You can answer, Bira. I think it's, this is what Joe has done. He's ridden the hot hand amongst a group of guys, and the hot hand right now is Sam Hauser, who's in the starting lineup. He made 5 threes last night, 50%. He's been shooting the lights out, so that sort of takes away some playing time for Walsh. And then you have Ugo doing his thing and Shireman. So that's my view on it. B-Rob, you're around the team more. What do you think?
Yeah, this is fluctuated all year long. Like, I feel like these guys have had like 5 or 10 minute stints, 5 or 10 game stints, I should say, where they just are in the starting 5 or just getting big minutes, and then it goes up and down. Everyone's kind of shown something to the point here. But with Shireman in a game like last night, it feels like Joe likes the guy to have more offensive creativity when Derek White's out of the lineup there to give them a better stretch dynamic. Jordan Walsh has been a very solid player, but he's not the passer that Baylor Shireman is. But defensively, rebounding-wise, I like Walsh more in a game like that. But I think the good news is both of them are playing well on the whole this season, and they have a surplus of talent on the wings right now, which I think is another interesting factor, guys, when you look in the trade deadline of, like, if they're going to trade for a big right now, trade for a good big, you have all these. I wonder if one of these guys is going to be on the block because they're obviously going to be squeezed out of the rotation once Jason Tatum comes back.
Oh, yeah. Keep pumping these guys up, Romeo Langford style.
Scott, Rhode Island. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not too much. How you doing?
Doing well. Jim, I just want to give you your flowers, buddy. Listen, when you said to Felger about putting the napkin on the legs to kind of stuff them in the closet or giving you a hard time, you saved me from being a fan for this show for like another 5 years. Like, that was, I was at my breaking point with the whole troll, whatever job thing that he does. And then, man, it was amazing. I just want to say thank you very much. Big fan, always a big fan, and keep doing a great job. This is a Sports Talk show. This is awesome. Love listening to it. Wish it was all the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
Like
well, it's
that.
all in good fun. Hey, we break balls around here. We'll talk to Bobby Manning, who I think is going to be joining us via the car. I hope he's not driving to Chicago. But either way, he is scheduled to join us next, talk more about the Celtics, this double overtime win against the Brooklyn Nets, and all things Celtics coming up next here on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
You're listening to the 98.5 The Sports Hub Celtics Show.
Hi, I'm Sean Flaherty, managing partner of Catches Law Group. At Catches Law, we're proud of our roots. For more than 40 years, we've been part of this community, raising families, cheering for the Patriots, and fighting for our neighbors. Being named the official law firm of the New England Patriots isn't just an honor. It's a reflection of what we stand for: loyalty, strength, and community. Whether you've been hurt on the job or are suffering from years of physical wear and tear, we're here for you. Visit catcheslaw.com or call us today to schedule your free consultation.
Win last night against the Brooklyn Nets. The team has been playing really overall what they can do ahead of the trade deadline. Joining us here on our expert hotline, one of our guys who's taken the time to join us before to talk C's. It's Bobby Manning, Celtics and NBA reporter for CLNS Media. Are you joining us from your car, Bobby? When we were going back and forth last night, is that you're like, oh yeah, no, I'll be driving. Were you in Brooklyn last night?
Yes, I was, for an unexpectedly thrilling game. I was not expecting when I drove down for this one for that to be what would happen. So I was pleasantly surprised.
So, yeah, and by the way, you're not driving to Chicago, are you? You're coming home?
No, heading back up to Boston.
All right, good. So did you leave that game, though, last night feeling like Brad Stevens needs to add a big man at the trade deadline that's more imperative than ever?
Yeah, right. Like both centers foul out of that game, and it's great that you plugged in and played your two-way rookie in a couple spots there. But I mean, that's a situation that could play out in a playoff game where if you look back and you're like, if you didn't add a center, a depth center, you're going to say, wow, like, that might cost you a series in a spot like that. Now, I like in a couple of different situations this year that they've plugged Hugo into that spot, and he actually is looking intriguing as a small ball center option. But you definitely need some kind of depth option at that spot, and preferably a guy who can bring a little something that the other two centers don't. They've gotten by with Caden and Garza well this year. I think it's a great story. But when you get into a playoff situation and the other team's keying in on those guys' weaknesses or targeting them or putting certain things out there that can exploit them a little bit, you do want to have some optionality in that spot. And there is so much buzz around them looking for a big man right now that it's hard to imagine them not doing so ahead of the deadline. I don't know if it's going to be a splash, but you do want to have another option there. So it feels inevitable that they're going to do it when you're in the 2-seed position right now. Jason Tatum's possibly coming back, and it looks like in this Eastern Conference you could reach the finals. I think it'd be inexplicable to not try something at that position where you need some depth.
Bobby, when you look at what's happening with Jaylen Brown, really since the 50-point performance against the Clippers, the efficiency has gone down, the turnovers have gone up. Do you get any sense that maybe he's feeling some fatigue from having to sort of carry this team now that we're at a point where we're this deep into the regular season, that there's just kind of a fatigue factor maybe that is kicking in for him, having to carry the team on a night-to-night basis 44 games in?
Yeah, possibly some of that. I think he's seeing more pressure from defenses. You saw it last night. Brooklyn was bringing over a second guy late every time. A couple of defenses have tried that recently, and effectively. I think the benefits of bringing extra pressure against them are showing for other teams, and as more teams see that on tape, they're going to try to do their own version of it. And I think that has benefited Pritchard last night. He finds a lot of space to operate. Sam Hauser obviously has been on fire recently with some of that extra space that the pressure teams have shown against Jalen's allowing him. So, I've talked to some other teams, some other coaches about this, like the challenge of trying to decide between whether you're going to pressure Jalen with extra defenders versus the fear teams obviously have about the Celtics three-point shooting. And I know it's been down a little bit this year, but there still is that gravity. There still is that knowledge that they're going to let it fly if you give them any space out there. So that's something I think teams have been caught between on a little bit. And I think as you've seen the Celtics stuck more around the middle of the league this year in terms of three-point shooting, and you have some guys who obviously, saw the shot from Hugo last night that you're willing to let shoot those. There's an increased sense, I think, that you can pressure Jalen, that you can get the ball out of his hands. And I think Joe even said last night they were using him as a decoy to some degree, that the way the Nets were guarding him. So that's something he's going to have to adjust to. I mean, the Clippers were double-teaming him in that 50-point game in L.A. too, so it doesn't always work smoothly, and I think he's adapted to a lot of the stuff teams have thrown at him this year. But I think that's the biggest reason by far lately that we've seen him regress a little bit, along with the fact that his mid-range shooting to start this year wasn't super sustainable. I mean, it was the best in the league, right up above Shea and some of the other best names in the sport up there. So that was always going to come down to earth a little bit. And it was part of my question about the sustainability of this team, is how much of it was jump shooting to begin this season. But they find other ways, defense and transition and forcing turnovers and all kinds of different things that they do. They're pretty flexible with their lineups, with the way that they win games, and it just continues to be amazing to watch.
Yeah, and I would just say quickly, be remiss if we didn't say, look, triple-double for Jaylen Brown last night. I knew he didn't shoot it well, 9 of 27, but 12 assists, just 2 turnovers. I think one of those was he dribbled the ball in traffic late and it kind of went off his shoe. So very good decision making. So that was a question a lot of people have about Jaylen Brown. I thought he handled the doubles really well. It's not a question, Bobby. This is just more my statement. So I think we do have to give him credit for the way he played last night in that game, creating for other guys.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that, jump pass assist to Pritchard, I forget which overtime it was in, was caught in the lane, in traffic, got stuck, jumped out. Not always the best decision to make in that spot, but I thought that was maybe his best pass of the year, finding Pritchard last second on one of those plays. He had another nice pass to him out of pressure, and you could just see him sensing it as the game went on, too, that, this is when that extra defender is going to come over. This is where I got to get off of it, and then, the ball just popped around. There were a lot of great contributors to that win last night. And again, it's the Nets, right? Like, it's, one of the worst teams in the league, but they played well in that game. They had a pretty good game plan for Boston and Jalen, and the way they just self-corrected as the night went on. And, they have a 23-point comeback this year against Indiana, the 19-point comeback against Miami last week. So they've been in a few games where it looks like it was heading toward losses, and they just find lineups, find, different approaches, adjustments to make. And, I'll throw this out here because I was talking to some people about in Brooklyn last night, voters and the likes. Joe is the coach of the year right now. And I think that's a slam dunk at the moment with the way he's handled this season and gotten the best out of a variety of players and just their performance versus expectations this year. I mean, he's been incredible. And that last-minute sub last night, Hugo going in and, finding that space in the corner, it was just another check in the boxes that he's filled out this year in terms of his coaching acumen. So I just continue to be impressed by the buttons he has pressed this year and the way that he's pushed his team above what really anybody, even the most optimistic projections this year, I don't think had them this high without Tatum and, with some of the losses. And specifically the guys they are getting stuff from. Like Hugo, did either of you guys expect Hugo Gonzalez to be a contributor to this team? Like,
No.
we thought he'd be in Maine.
I mean, I didn't think he'd be this good. I thought because he's a guy that had played overseas, and Brad had mentioned that he could maybe carve out a role. But I definitely didn't think Jordan Walsh would be a contributor. I didn't think Minot for his time period would be a contributor. So your point absolutely stands. I've said it all year. Joe has done a great job of riding the hot hand and kind of playing energy guy roulette and being able to find the right guy, being able to find that bullet in the chamber that he can use on a given night. He's done a really, really good job with that.
Or even, Bobby, Amari Williams, who came in
yeah.
and flashed in that overtime with the stop of Claxton at the rim.
How about the pass to they're down 5? How about the
Pritchard.
pass he makes on the long throw to Pritchard? That was a great play.
So, Bobby, is that him flashing there? I mean, that was instinctual, some of that play there, or is that he's good and we'll be talking about this kid, years to come, or is that because they're playing the lowly lottery-bound Nets?
Is Hugo or Williams?
Williams.
I have a tough time grasping it with him because I think we've seen guys shine in the G League who don't translate that to the NBA level, and I think his couple NBA flashes have been that's a good one. Yeah. Have been so situational that I think it says a lot about his awareness and just his IQ and adapting to situations that he had a stop on Evan Mobley down in the Cleveland game earlier this year, and he was guarding Jalen Duren when they were in some foul trouble in a Detroit game. This one, I mean, he flew in 2 hours before the game, he said, when Keita was sick, just as an emergency move, and was ready for that situation. Said they practiced that play that set up the Pritchard 3 there. So it's impressive the spots he's helped them in. And if you do look at his main productivity this year, it's been, some not to throw these names out there as comparisons, but the role he's playing up there is like Jokic, Şengün kind of creation, pushing the ball, running point, passing out of the high post. Like he's running the offense up there, and that's an intriguing trade out of your big. Now, I don't know where he's going to put the ball in the basket from. He's not a shooter. He's not much of a rolling threat yet. He's more of just a passing big out of post-ups and in the high post. So he has a great awareness and vision of the court. Started playing basketball pretty late in his life coming out of England, but they've developed him rapidly, and that's the one thing I've heard with him is that he's just improved so much so quickly that they've been able to get him into some NBA situations where they probably thought going into the year he was just going to spend the entire season in Maine. I was a little frustrated they didn't get Ryan Kalkbrenner out of Charlotte, who was ready to go playing center and has been one of the best rookies in this class. Felt like cheap out move, with, for lack of a better term, that they, gave a guy a two-way contract that doesn't have a cap or tax hit in Williams rather than giving a guaranteed contract like Charlotte gave Kalkbrenner. But, it looks like if they can find a comparable skill set there, develop them well, and get them integrated. I mean, you've seen already what they've done with Keita, what they've done with Cornette, to some degree with Garza coming from the outside. Like, they've developed their bigs well through the last 3-4 players that they've had at that spot who've gone through their system. So that alongside what he's done up in Maine gets you a little excited, but I think we've just seen too little of his NBA productivity to, make any declarations about whether he's going to be part of this team in the future. And all you keep hearing is that they're looking for a big at this deadline. So I don't think they view him as any solution this year, certainly.
In terms of looking at a big, we asked B-Rob this. I mean, what are some of the names that, are that either you're hearing or that could be out there? Obviously I'm not plugged in like you guys are, but when I look around the league, I look at a guy like maybe, say, Jalen Smith in Chicago, and I say, oh, that would be a nice fit for the Celtics. But what are some realistic names?
Yeah, Smith's a good one. I don't know if Chicago's buying or selling. There's some Zion noise with them that makes me think, all right, they're going to try to stay in the mix here. Nets are certainly going to sell, and I would love Nick Claxton. You watch him last night. Guards every position, good rebounder. He's continued to get better and add layers to his game. He's still relatively young. That's probably something that's costing you a couple firsts alongside the Zubac an LA deal. It feels like that's off the table now as they've improved. And then Jaren Jackson was always going to be hard to pry from Memphis too, even though you could look at that as like a move that solidifies your core. Now that'd be exciting. And what are you realistically giving up there? Is it Simon, some of the young guys, and a pick or two? Like, you do have to consider something like that if you can actually do it, because that might be the final piece that solidifies you as a championship contender, not only into the future, but this year, which is what I'm sure some fans want to see, given the start that you've had here and Tatum potentially coming back. So I don't snub my nose at that one, even at the high cost, because we've seen this team identify some players who, could potentially star in their roles. And I've always liked the idea of him if he, minimizes some of his weaknesses, becoming a guy who could, star alongside Brown and Tatum. It'd be expensive. This ownership group would have to commit to and massive, maybe like record level luxury tax to do something like that. But is it worth it to get the best out of the next handful of years here? I think potentially, but I don't see that happening. Maybe in the offseason you revisit something like that. For now, I like Day'Ron Sharpe in Brooklyn. I liked when he played with Harden there. He's relatively young as a second-year team option, good rolling physical threat. Base Missy in New Orleans, who was an all-rookie guy who's a little buried now, is someone I'd like to see if you could potentially swipe from the Pelicans down there. And, I think maybe even Marvin Bagley, if it's like cheap, and you feel like he can be a reclamation project. He's played decently in Washington, and they're obviously going to be a seller as well. So there are a lot of stopgap options there, but as you know, Chris, like they've traded for Tillman, they've traded for Mike Muscala in a couple of these seasons, and the guys just aren't good enough to break through. So is the player you're going to get even going to be good enough to hit the floor? I think that's the balance they're going to have to strike here if they're giving up picks, which they don't have a lot of if you look at it.
But they do have the Pelicans. They have that Pelicans second-round pick, though.
They do.
That's a good one. That's an important pick, and that's one where I could maybe say, hey, you give up your first because it's later than you think, even though it's a really good draft, because you have that Pelicans pick. The other thing I want to ask you just quickly on Memphis, outside of Jaren Jackson, what about some of the other guys there, like Jock Landale, Santi Aldama? If Memphis moves Ja Morant and starts peeling away pieces, would either one of those guys be available?
Yeah, possibly. I think Aldama needs a new contract, if I remember correctly, which, again, with all this tax stuff we're talking about here, is definitely going to be a consideration. And that's an interesting thing about this deadline for me is this is going to be the first time this new ownership group, they're already in the tax. They're already paying $230 million for this year's team. Are they going to hold the line with that and commit to that to keep contending here? Because I think, given the start to the year that they've had, the worst thing you could see at this deadline is them getting off like Simon's salary or something like that, things we were talking about going into the year. And that should not be on the table at this point, given what they've done and the Tatum thing looming over this season, as we've talked about. So I think that's going to be the first test we see from them is, do you actually commit to this year's salary, this year's tax bill? And then beyond that, are you willing to even add to it, whether it's now or in the summer? Because it's still contending time for this team. Like, I think expectations got reset going into the year, and now given where Tatum's at and given the core they're going to have going forward beyond this year, you want to start to reinvest in this team. I know you guys have talked about it on Felger and Maz a bunch, that this year gave ownership and the team a break a little bit in terms of building a contending roster around Tatum and Brown. that won't last long. Like, you're going to have to be back in the mix here and have all your holes filled and, give an appropriate, commitment money-wise to winning another championship here. Because once Tatum hits that floor, it's going to be go time again. Expectations are back on. You're as fit to win this thing out of the East as anybody. And so you do want to see a serious commitment to this team. And listen, I know that there's a lot of considerations basketball-wise that go into that, and you have to find another team to actually make a deal with you. But they should heavily be exploring moves that set them up for now and the future at this deadline, given what they've done to start this year.
Yeah, refresh my memory, Bobby, because I don't think we spoke to you until maybe the first month and a half of the season. Because again, they're the two, and no one really saw this coming, considering no Tatum and all that. Where did you think that they were going to be for this season? Kind of 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah, I had them a little higher than that. I could have seen them at 6 coming in, but I was definitely in the lower half of the East, just given some of the roster questions they had. I didn't think they were going to be bad. That was one thing I was certain about going in this year, given Brown, White. The past seasons, they've rested guys and have won games against a variety of teams. So I felt pretty good about their system and the top-end players on the roster that were still available. I saw some upside if, other teams weren't healthy, and, they've certainly been one of the more healthy teams, Tatum aside, across the league. So I think that's been a big part of it. But, yeah, I definitely saw them being competitive this year. This never looked like a tank to me, just because Tatum was out and there was some uncertainties up and down the roster. You felt good enough about the guys who have been here, and that even includes like a Pritchard and Hauser and just some guys who have contributed to a championship run. Kata played a little bit last year and looked good. There was enough here to me in a weak conference to make me think they could have been competitive, but I didn't. They've looked like the Celtics, by and large this year. Not only that, but like the players they've given up, Holiday, Porzingis, Horford, like those all look like the right moves. You could argue that given their health and some of the regression that those guys have dealt with, they'd be in a worse spot keeping those guys rather than, implementing some of the young players and, taking a step forward with the core guys that they have this year. So it's impressive the way they've pulled this off roster management wise and coaching wise, and even, Jalen obviously taking the step forward in his game that he has here. And this is, if you were going to picture life without Tatum and Jalen leading a team in the best case scenario of that, like this is exactly what it's been. So I'm wildly impressed by him. It's been a fun product to watch. They definitely play hard night in, night out. And again, you walk into every game this year, even against some of the best teams in the league, feeling like they're going to at least compete. And they win pretty much every night when they should. So it's like they've just continued what they've done the last handful of years here under Missoula. So I give him a lot of credit. I think I saw this stat floating around too, Chris. I think they have the second lowest point differential in losses. So they don't get blown out ever. So like they're in every game, and expect that to continue to be the case this year. And right now I feel, given New York's weird situation, because they were my favorite going into this year, I think this team can win the East, and I almost expect them to, given some of the teams that haven't been in that spot, like Detroit. This team's been there by and large, and I know there's some questions and some things to hammer up before the deadline here, but Tatum's back. You have to feel really good about this team making the finals.
I want to ask you about that, Bobby, before we let you go. I mean, how close do you think Tatum is? We all saw the workout in Detroit, and so we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you. I mean, if you had to guess, what's your time frame for Tatum? Is there any chance it's pre-All-Star break?
I don't think it's pre-All-Star break. I think the break's going to be an important time to see if he's back in practice, if he's, doing some basketball activity at that point beyond the one-on-one stuff that we've seen. And a lot of those workouts that we have seen have been pretty similar, just some one-on-one work. And I think the progress has been pretty rapid. I've, tried to touch base about where he is specifically, and it's a tough thing to gather at this point. They keep it pretty tight on the Tatum front. But his presence, he went through another workout in Brooklyn, that shoot around yesterday morning, and just continues to constantly be around the team at this point. But talking to some of the guys who've come back from Achilles, Drew Smith in Miami, Isaiah Jackson, and James Wiseman in Indiana, a lot of those guys, I know it was going into a season, so it's a little different, maybe jumping in on the fly. They felt relatively ready to get back into basketball activity about 8-9 months, and this is going to be the 9-month mark for Tatum coming up around the All-Star break here. Different story, I'm sure, for a franchise player compared to guys who are fighting for their NBA lives, which has been expressed to me as well. But 9 months is a typical Achilles recovery at this point. When you look at a lot of the other guys who have come back, I'm sure they're going to be a little more cautious than that and proceed slowly. So I think March has always felt like that time frame. Once you ramp up, once you get through some practices, once you get through some on-court activity, that also gives you a month-long runway of the playoffs, because we're going to be talking about 10, 20 minutes a game when he initially comes back. Does he come off the bench? It's going to be a slow acclimation to get him back into the mix. But I think it's important to have a month, which is about the time frame I've been told that you're going to be limited coming back from this thing to get ready for the playoffs. I don't think if it's close to playoff time, you're just going to throw him right in and have him in the mix there. So I think if he's not back by mid-March, that's where you start to have some discussions about, like, all right, is this the season here? Or do you wait till the fall and be 100% ready to go? So, we're talking about a month and a half here where it's going to be critical that he starts to take some of the steps, and Brad has listed them out with a lot of the contact stuff and, equal distribution across your legs and all that sort of stuff. And those aren't things we're seeing. Like, for all we know, he could be doing 3-on-3 right now, and we're just not seeing it. But it's coming up on that time now. Like, players are coming back from that injury now around 9-10 months, and that's about to be where Tatum's at right now. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch that All-Star break in particular. Like, is he in practice coming out of that? That'll be a big question, I feel like.
All right, Bobby. Great stuff as always. Good talking to you. When you drive back for New York, do you take the scenic route? Do you take the Merritt Parkway, or do you just
I do. I'm on it right now as we speak.
Excellent. Yeah, that is one of the great drives in America, especially this time with the snow and the canopy of the trees. Oh, that's wonderful. Enjoy.
And you get the Dunkin' Donuts every exit. Yeah, it's great.
All right. At Real Bob Manning on Twitter X. Bobby Manning covering the Celtics for CLNS Media. Always good stuff. Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks for making the time,
Thank you,
Bobby.
guys.
All right, take care. We'll get to more of your calls on the Celtics and the time we have remaining. The Sports Hub Celtics Show coming up next.
This is the Sports Hub Celtics Show.
Hi, I'm Sean Flaherty, managing partner of Ketch's Law Group. And for over 40 years, Ketch's Law has been more than just a law firm. We've been your neighbors. We've stood with New England families through good times and through tough times. That's why the New England Patriots chose us to be their official law firm, because we know what this region is built on: hard work, grit, and loyalty. At Ketch's Law, we fight for workers who are injured on the job, families who have been wronged, and neighbors who need a voice. When you need someone in your corner, turn to the team that's been here for decades. Visit catcheslaw.com today.
Chris wanted to do a little house cleaning. That's what we were just discussing with Bobby Manning.
Yeah, just a little cleanup on Santi Aldama. He did sign a contract extension, 3 years, $52.5 million this past offseason. The good thing, that deal includes a club option for 2027-28. So with this Ja Morant news about his UCL, the elbow, maybe Memphis tears it down, and that's a guy who's available. Cap hit next year would be $17 million.
All right, Don and Carver wants to talk about Brad Stevens, who I would think you'd want to see be active going into the NBA trade deadline, which is coming up on February 5th. Hello, Don.
Yeah, hi. How you guys doing? Listen, I grew up with a volatile Bulldog as a GM for the Celtics right Auerbach, and all of a sudden I was smack dab in the middle of the two baby-faced assassins, Danny Ainge and Brad Anderson, and both of whom exhibited some wizardry in making left field deals and acquisitions that turned out pretty good for the Celtics. So I never expected what I'm seeing now this year on the court. They're doing terrific. And I'm a dyed-in-the-wool green team. I love this team, and I'm looking forward to see what wizardry he pulls off, Brad Stevens, at the deadline to see if they get a big. But it'll hurt a little bit because I like all of these guys. That's pretty much it for me, guys.
Thanks, Don.
No, that makes sense what Don's saying. I would just say, look, we've kind of been down this road before. It's like, you can't give up Al Jefferson for Kevin Garnett. Oh, what's it going to be like without Marcus Smart? I like these guys too, and there's some of them I wouldn't give up. But again, I'll just say, 2 words. Romeo Langford. Does anybody regret that trade? Even look, Neesmith's a guy you probably wish you had back, but when you got Malcolm Brogdon, he was the 6th man of the year, and Neesmith didn't prevent you from winning a championship. Losing him didn't prevent you from winning a championship. So this is a thing Celtics fans do. I feel like sometimes they get overly attached to the role guys.
Matt and Waltham with a thought on Jaylen Brown. Hello, Matt. Matthew.
Matt.
Matty. All right, the hell with you.
They lost.
All right, well, with that, we will wrap up the Sports Hub Celtics show for this week and get back to what many of you were clamoring for. You had to drop off because we had to do the Celtics show.
Contractually obligated.
Contractually obligated, so you want to talk Pats, and rightfully so, as they get into the AFC Championship game tomorrow afternoon against the Denver Broncos. We'll get to that and your calls and thoughts on the big game tomorrow after the headlines coming up in just a few minutes here on 98.5 of Sports Hub.
We'll have more of the Sports Hub Celtics show next.
Illinois.
From the Telefair Tiger Studios, this is Boston's home for sports. The flagship station of the Patriots, Bruin, the Celtics. WBCFM and HD Boston 98.5, the Sports Hub. Beasley Media Group station celebrating 65 years of broadcasting. Essential Sports Hub headline presented by Celsius Energy Drinks.
It's the Patriots and the Denver Broncos. The AFC Championship game tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Head coach Mike Vrabel of the Patriots said linebacker Harold Landry dealing with that knee injury. He's been ruled out of the game. Wide receiver Mac Hollins was back practicing this week. Corner Carlton Davis was dealing with a concussion, and linebacker Marte Mapu. The three of them are all questionable for tomorrow's game. For Denver, your running back J.K. Dobbins had come off IR this week, was practicing, but he's already been ruled out, so he won't play. Wide receivers Troy Franklin with a hamstring, centers Luke Wattenberg with a shoulder, Alex Forsythe with an ankle. They're all questionable. Wide receiver Pat Bryant a full go. Also a uniform update for those of you that are fans of the aesthetics of athletics. The Patriots are wearing their white-on-white combination for tomorrow's game in Denver. This year they wore that combination 3 times, and they are 3-0. More NFL news. The Buffalo Bills search for a new head coach now reportedly includes former quarterback Phillip Rivers, who has never coached at the collegiate or professional level. Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza, who won the Heisman Trophy, leading the number 1 Hoosiers to their first national championship earlier this week. Foregoing his final college season, will enter the NFL draft, where he will presumably be the number 1 overall pick to be selected by the Las Vegas Raiders, where his career will promptly be ruined. According to the Miami Herald, wide receiver Tyreek Hill almost assuredly will be released by the Dolphins before the new league year begins in March. Peyton Pritchard, 32 points. Jaylen Brown, 27, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. Celtics outlast the lottery-bound Brooklyn Nets 130-126 in double OT last night. Celtics right back at it this evening in Chicago against the Bulls with tip-off at 8. Sean Grandy, Cedric Maxwell with the call over on 105.7 WROR. And they're there because the Bruins are also in action tonight. Home hosting the Montreal Canadiens with puck drop at 7. Ryan Johnston, Bob Beers, they have the call here on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Headlines are brought to you by the 99. Head to the Nines for game day tomorrow. Score 6-pack of bone-in wings for just $5.99 and full-size apps for just $6.99. You gotta love the Nines. I'm Jim Murray for Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub.